Everybody agrees this problem should end, but it isn't ending. And we need to ask why. It's not ending because of consciousness. Consciousness is the most powerful force in the universe. It's what we are. Just Rights, led by Buan. Buan and I started many years ago to try and work together on child rape. And one day I said, "You're a fool, Buan." The biggest rape, the biggest rape is in plain sight. It's child marriage. And we decided it needed to change, and we needed to change the consciousness. Now, we came with love, but actually the strategy was to bring fear to the men raping children. Fear through prosecution. Fear is the opposite of love. So men control governments, not women. And it's the women who really care about this. Okay? And they understand that the divine feminine needs to be protected. And so the police don't prosecute, the victims are not protected, and the courts don't function, and there's no, as a result, prosecution. So I said to Buan, "I'll bring the only thing I have for you, money, but you fix it, or you'll have a big problem when you get to the gate." Now, people talk about that the solution, the root causes are poverty, lack of education. They're right, but we can't get every girl into school and and end all poverty in the time scale that we need to act in. And so the strategy that these are the strategy that Buan went forward with was prosecution. Now, what do you need to prosecute? The answer that we found out was NGOs who were willing, if needed, to die for the cause. Now, I said, what sort of NGOs are you going to find to do this work? Mercenaries? He said, "No, Chris. People who are willing to give their life." And he found them. Had to create NGOs, hundreds of NGOs, because we wanted to do the work at scale. He's funded nearly 300 NGOs, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 NGO workers. And I met some of these in a room, thousands of them, and the atmosphere was electric. They were there for their purpose, their sole purpose, which was to end this. And if they were going to be beaten by the community or the police or anybody, that wasn't going to stop them. You know, while we were there, some of them were arrested by police who told them stop causing trouble to end this, but nothing stopped it. So you need to create NGOs who are not going to sit behind a desk. I asked the First Lady of Sierra Leone when I met her last year, "Do you like NGOs?" She said, "Why would I work with an NGO who sits behind the desk in the capital while I'm out in the countryside trying to stop the child marriage?" But in addition to the NGOs being funded, you need to change the consciousness to one where, through the law, when people realize not only is this illegal, but you will go to jail for it, they start to think, change their consciousness that this is wrong. Okay, and it's, so the theory of change that works here is change the consciousness through enforcement. The men you heard the numbers that child marriages collapsed in many states in India. Is it because suddenly the men don't want to rape and control these children? No, it's because they fear going to jail. That's what it is. And so this is actually an incredible moment, because for the first time at scale, it's been proven that prosecution can work, does work. And but it's not the NGOs alone. They need the community to report. And that's where the pledging, public pledging, where people pledge, what do they pledge? To stop child marriage and to report in their community, okay? Now, usually if they report to the police, they do nothing. So they have to use the NGO to force the police to work and to protect the victim. If you don't protect the victim, she won't testify and you won't get the prosecution. And then often the courts don't function. So one thing Buan had to do is, in effect, ensure the opening of some 800 courts, because there's which were dedicated for serious crimes against children. So, and when the police won't get involved, prosecute the police. Okay? Do whatever it takes to get those prosecutions. You don't need to prosecute every man, okay? Just enough, and publicize it that they know that the game is over. And the other key, and it's not just the NGOs, you want to get whoever in the village will report, children, women, those are the ones who understand this the best. And so we have, so many people who have reported child marriages who took the pledge. So the pledge is a reinforcement in your consciousness that not only this is wrong, but you're going to act, you're going to report. The other component here is religious leaders. They're critical. No marriage takes place without a religious leader, whether it be a priest or an imam. So if you can stop these people marrying children, you go a huge way to stopping the process. And what is just rights work done? Well, the law in India, as is many cases, the husband, the man marries, is not just applied that. The law says if you aid or abet a child marriage, you go to jail for a long time. Who does that apply to? The so-called religious leaders. So they've been prosecuting religious leaders who marry children. But many, or most, are open to persuasion, and as a proof, they put signs on the mosques, signs on the churches say we won't marry children. It works. Prosecution works. Of course we want to get girls in school. Yeah, that's vital. But I want to say really two more things. About 2 years ago, I went to a slum in Africa to see a program I fund of giving free contraceptives to adolescents. Girls below the age of marriage, but something was obviously wrong with the situation. 3 girls in front of me, super depressed. And I looked in their eyes, there was nothing behind the eyes. Totally soul disconnected. And I said, why do you need contraceptives? At first they wouldn't answer. I said, do you have boyfriends? They said no. I said, do you have husbands? They said no. I said, why do you need the contraceptives? They said, we're being raped all the time since the time we're children. And they cried and wept and said, just get me out of here, I beg you. Get us into a school, get us out of this place. And I realized I felt something horrible. I felt a deep shame in that moment. So we hear this word, child rape. But unless you feel it, you don't know it. And so this is why I want to fund this work. Because you take away the only thing these girls have, which is their soul. It's a spiritual death for these girls. So I'm willing to fund. It's an open invitation to NGO leaders. Okay, it's helpful to have government commitment to enforce, but I'm willing to fund where we don't have it. Okay. Because this area is unfunded. In effect, it's unfunded. Because the people who have the money don't care about it. Yeah, we can talk and we can all make speeches, but where is the money? So we won because we put the money into it. Not a lot of money, really. Honestly, I think of it as a tiny amount of money for what's been achieved. And once you end it, you don't need to keep doing it because the consciousness changed and it becomes institutionalized. So what we need is more Buan Rebus in each of these countries in Africa where it has to end and all the countries where it has to end. Okay? Because it doesn't take long for people to be afraid of going to jails. Buan has a sign on his desk that might summarize what I'm talking about. There's no love without fear. He wants the rapist to have fear. So they stop. And then this will end. When the consciousness ends, and to become love of the child and fear for and the rapist to have fear. And it can end, okay? We talk about it, you hear all these speeches, yeah, we must end. Well, he did it. He and his other NGOs. But what happened is I saw thousands of people like him in India, thousands of his NGO network. They actually didn't care about him. They were unleashed, and their life depended on achieving their sole purpose, which was to stop child marriage. So he's not the only one willing to do this work. We just need to find them. I'll give them the money, but we need to find these people who care enough to save these children we've been hearing about, because the strategy works. And so I'm not saying it's the only thing we should do, okay? But it's super leveraged. So, you know, I thank Buan with all my heart for the work you do, but it's not for the faint-hearted. So we need to find the people willing to give their lives for the cause, and I'll bring the money, but together we can do this. I'm sure of it, okay? And because, you know, the evidence is here. So that's all that I would say, and thanks everybody for coming today.